Hey there, sorry it's been a while since my last video. I want to give you some tips on how to read charts. I know there's a lot of you that work at churches, and mostly what you're seeing are lyric sheets with chords written above them, and those are great, especially if you know the song really well. The only problem is they don't often tell you how many beats or how many bars of a certain chord, or when exactly the chord changes, if it's pushed or not. And I know there's ways to kind of do cheater notation for that. What I want to talk about is reading more legitimate lead sheets, charts that are likely to have rhythms, melodies, notes, things like that, repeat signs, DSs, all that stuff. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm just going to give you some helpful tips that I think will kind of maybe revolutionize the way you approach reading a chart. And that's you kind of want to have an approach when you get handed a chart, a new chart. In the studio, we get really used to it because you're getting handed chart after chart after chart, and sometimes it's only four bars long, sometimes it's 11 pages long. You just never know. But the first thing you want to do is you want to scan that chart and look for problem areas, things that are going to cause a problem. Okay. So this is kind of a little bit of a checklist to help you kind of navigate and get to the point where you can play through a chart without too much problem. Okay. The first thing we're going to talk about is, are there notes? Are there notes on the chart? Single, notation. Is it staff with little black dots? Those things. Now, I'm starting with the assumption that you already know how to read music. Okay. But maybe you don't know how to sight read very well. You might be able to find notes. If you see an A, on the second space from the bottom, you might be able to find that note given some time. And that's fine. You'll get better at it the more you do it. And the more time you spend with these kind of charts in front of you, the more likely you're going to be able to play them correctly very early in the process, maybe even sight read them perfectly. And I've got a friend, Joe DeBlasi, one of my friends who's a session guy from way back. He is amazing. You can throw anything in front of him and he can sight read it. I can sight read most things, but if it gets crazy or there's a lot of high notes, ledger lines, and things like that, I'm going to have problems too. And I've got some tips that help me, and hopefully they'll help you. One of the things is you look on the chart, scan the whole chart, maybe it's a page or 2 pages or whatever, and look for that lowest note. What's the lowest note on the whole chart? Let's say for the sake of argument, it's the C below the staff. So the line below the staff, it's that C. Okay, that's the lowest note you could find anywhere on the chart. Okay, then you're scanning the chart, and maybe that note was in bar 20 or something. And you notice in bar 38, there's a high E, like up here, and it's on the third ledger line above the staff. So that's quite a bit of, from this note to this note, that's a lot of range. Actually, to be honest, quite unusual for a chart to have that, especially if it's single notes. If it's single, if it's single note reading like that, then you're probably not normally going to see that kind of range. If it's written out chords or written out arpeggios, something like, you might see a bigger range of notes. Okay, so let me just restate. Find the lowest note, C, and find the highest note, E in this case. It's my imaginary chart. Okay, now here's the key. Find a place on the neck where you can play both of those notes without moving your hand. Okay, well, I can play that C right here at the 8th fret of the 6th string, and I can play that E up here at the 12th fret. Okay? Now, if we think about chromatically, 5 notes per string, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on each one of these. If we think about that, every note that's in between those 2 notes is right there. Okay? This is key, because if the notes, you're having to read a lot of notes, one of the temptations is to kind of go where you know it, where you know the notes are, you know your fretboard really well. And then all of a sudden you find yourself having to run up here to the high notes that are not down here low. Okay, so knowing your fretboard really helps, and I did a video on that, you can check that out. on how to work on learning your fretboard. But the beauty of this is that means that every note that you're going to need to play in that chart is going to be right here. So you never have to look down at your hand, or you shouldn't have to look down at your hand. And that's key, because one of the things that's going to happen is if the chart's complex or it's moving by very quickly, if you look down at your hands, you're going to lose your place. If you look down for just a second and then look up, where was I? You're going to be lost. And so that's where it comes in really handy, so to speak, to have all the notes under your hand right there in one spot. Okay, if it was G to B, then it'd be here, or if it could be a smaller range. But just find a spot where you can grab all of the notes in the song, and then you won't ever have to look down at your hand. You'll just be in that position the whole time. Okay, so that's a way of dealing with notes. Now maybe you'll have a chart that doesn't have any notes in it. Great, or just a couple, and you can find those and with no problem. Okay, the next thing you want to do is start looking for chords you don't know. Okay, most of the chart may be fine. Stuff like you may just see G7 or C major 7 or D minor 7, or you may even just see major chords, like E minor or D major. And so you might just have triads, but there might be some weird altered bass chords. You might see something like G over C, which would be kind of like that, and it might be, it might just come out of the blue, or you might just have G over B, or you might have something as complex as like G7 sharp 9 flat 5, and so those are the chords you're going to have to go and kind of decrypt. And you can even write them down, maybe even write down, you're writing, 10th fret, 9th fret, 10th, write that above the chord if you need it on those couple chords that are giving you a problem. And I also did a couple videos ago called Demystifying Chord Symbols. Check that out. That can help you understand some of those weirder chord symbols. Okay, here's another trick. If there's a complex rhythm, okay, in the song, say the tempo is it's kind of a medium tempo, and it's da 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 da, some crazy 16th note figure, dotted eighths, dotted whatever. The one way you can kind of learn that, and it may just be a little passage you have to learn. It may be just da 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 like that, but seeing that written down, the first time you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy scary. But what you can do to simplify that is to double the value of everything. So if it's a 16th tied to an eighth to a 16th tied to another 16th tied to another, to an eighth to a 16th, it's this crazy rhythm. And what you do is you just double the value of everything, and now you've got an eighth and a quarter, and an eighth tied to another eighth and a quarter, and an eighth tied to another eighth and a quarter. So that that would be that rhythm. But if you double the value of it, it doesn't look so bad when you count out slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and. Now it may still be crazy for you at eighth notes. You can double the value again, and then what would be let's see, a quarter note, a half note, a quarter note tied to another quarter note, half note, quarter note, that kind of thing. So that doesn't sound so hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, dun 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 dun. See, like that. And so what you end up having is a very, very slow version of the actual rhythm. So dun 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 down 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 down. You speed it up, down down down, and it ends up with as you go back to the 16th notes, you can start to see, you can hear the rhythm first, and then you'll start to see those rhythms, you'll start to memorize what they are, because there's only so many. It's not like there's an infinite possibility of different rhythms like there are notes. When you combine the notes and the rhythms, obviously it can get more complex. Okay, now here's another thing you want to do. You want to look for all the repeat signs, the DS's. DS just means to go back to the sign. It'll say often DS al coda, which means, go back to the sign that looks like an S with dots on it, and then when you get to the sign that says Dakota, then you're going to jump forward. The reason they have this, it's so can be kind of convoluted, kind of complex, is so that you can have a chart be 2 pages instead of 8 pages. Because sometimes if you were to write everything out linearly without any repeats, it would be a very, very long chart. And so if there's nothing changing in the second verse from the first verse, you might as well repeat the first verse. If the second chorus is the same as the first chorus, you might as well repeat it. But then sometimes you need codas or first endings and things like that. Now, one trick that a lot of guys have done through the years is to highlight those. Have a highlighter in your guitar case, highlight those repeat signs, the front and the back end, the first endings, the second endings, things like that. And that's a great idea. That allows those things, your eye to kind of jump to those. Some guys will even use different colors for different things, like if it's a DS or if it's just a simple repeat, or if it's a coda, they might use different colors. One problem with this, though, is if you have lighting on stage, okay, and you're dealing with a basic black on white chart, and you do some yellow highlighting, and they throw yellow lights on you, that highlighting goes away. If it's blue highlighting and there's a blue light shining on your chart, you won't see the highlighting. It's like magic. So I generally just highlight with pencil or pen and just kind of circle things or maybe draw arrows, and that way I'm more likely to navigate through the chart fine. Pretty soon you're probably going to memorize a tune. You won't have to look through all that, but initially you might have to depend on all those symbols, okay? The other thing is you might ask whoever handed you the chart, are there pencil changes or are we reading the ink? And what that means is, has somebody made changes in it, like has a chord been changed, or have they gotten rid of a repeat sign? And those would be called pencil changes because somebody marked in with a pencil or pen. Okay, and sometimes they don't want those changes. Sometimes they want to go back the way the chart was originally. So if you say pencil or ink, a lot of music directors would know what that means, and they would say, oh yeah, we're reading the ink on this one, okay? And then the last thing I want to tell you is just to try to force yourself to look ahead. Try to look ahead on the chart. You know, as you're reading, you're in bar 20, be looking at bar 21 while you're playing bar 20. See if you can do that, and all you need to be able to do is have super short-term memory. You know, your memory needs to be able to last about 4 or 5 seconds so you can remember what you read 4 or 5 seconds ago so you can start reading the next thing. It's just kind of like, walking down the street and chewing gum at the same time. It's kind of like doing two things at once. You're playing guitar, but you're thinking about what you're going to play next. And that's always a good skill to have when you're reading charts, especially if the tempos are going pretty quick. If it's going by really fast, you're going to want to have your eyes ahead. Okay, so this is just some tips that you can use to navigate through some maybe complex charts or some new charts or whatever. Another tip, this is kind of different, but another tip you might try is writing charts. I found that as I prepared charts for situations, like I was a music director for some different shows and things like that, I had to create the charts. I had to create the horn charts, I had to create all the bass and drums and everybody's charts. And I found that I got to become a much better reader when I became a better writer. When I got better at writing the music out, I got better at learning how to notate things correctly, or the most precise way and the easiest way to see. I mean, generally, notation is even as though it looks very complex, the rules are all designed to highlight the simplest way to view something. Like, for example, you really should, when you're doing a chart, if it's not a lot of repeats, like similar bars, you generally want to have 4 bars per stave. And the reason you do that is so that you can take your eye off the chart for a second, and you're probably not going to lose your place. Because you're mentally going to keep track of those bars going by. You know, music tends to go by in groupings of 4 bars or 8 bars or 16 bars, 12-bar blues, for example. And so, if you do look down, your head will probably keep track of where you are. If the chart has 5 bars and then 6 bars and then 7 bars and then 2 bars and 3 bars, boy, it's going to be really tough to see that. When you're going to lose your place if you ever look off the chart on those. So that's another thing you might want to look at when you're looking at the chart. Make sure if it's written in 4-bar groupings. If it's not, then you're just going to have to pay a little bit more attention. Okay? God bless you guys. I hope you're doing well, and I'll have another video soon. I got some more ideas for stuff I want to do. So talk to you soon. Bye-bye.